Okay, I just want to test this out because I've plugged a microphone in, so I'm just going to see if people can actually hear me. So the stream will probably start at 5, but yeah, I just wanted to test out to see if you can hear me. So yeah, we will start at 5 this week answering the questions on driving. Hello. Okay, I think this is working. Okay, I think this is working. Okay. If you're here and you can hear me, leave a comment in the live chat just so I can check, because I've bought a microphone this week because last week people said they couldn't hear me properly. So I just want to check that you can actually hear me this week. That's a bit clearer for you. I hope so. But we will start answering questions in the next few minutes, I guess. As I did say, it obviously would start at 5 p.m. So yeah, this week is all about learning to drive. Okay, good, you can hear me. Yeah, this week's all about learning to drive. So I'm going to talk to you about theory and practical, as well as like tips on taking both those kind of tests really. And then I'll also answer some general questions, you know, like how much should I pay for lessons, insurance, getting a first car, all that kind of stuff. I kind of just want to cover a general basis. So I do have a lot of questions already which I collected from Instagram, but if you do have any questions you can think right now that you do want answered, then feel free to put them in the chat and I'll just make sure to answer them first really. I hope you're all well though. Weather today's been a bit dodgy, so that's a bit disappointing, but what can you do? Just wait for a few more people to arrive because obviously I don't want them to miss out on anything. But yeah, I thought this would be quite a convenient video to do just because driving lessons start up again on Saturday, I believe, and I think tests are from about the 22nd of July. Kind of crazy, we're like halfway through the year properly now. Yeah, so driving tests are on the 22nd, I remember reading. So yeah, I thought if I do this video now, then if you are going back to having lessons, hopefully this can answer, or if you're thinking of starting lessons, this should help. And if you've got a test booked in, whether that's theory or practical, hopefully that can go ahead. I'm not really sure how that's working at the moment. It's obviously, I've passed my tests, but I've got friends who are doing theirs and things like that. So I've been trying to like be somewhat updated, so I can provide you with the best information really for this video. I'll give it one more minute and then I will get on with answering some questions. Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead. So for anyone who's just joined or is just joining, this week is all about learning to drive, taking your theory test, taking your practical test, and then kind of like also once you've passed your test or when you're getting a car, whether that's before or after you've passed your test. So I've got some questions here which I collected already on Instagram and on YouTube. So if you do want to be involved next time, then either follow my Instagram, which is at Sophia X YouTube, or keep an eye out on the community tab of my channel, as I've been frequently answering things on there and asking for video ideas and, you know, basically just asking for your input and for allowing you to be active in these videos. So Izzy Wardle _ asked, how many lessons or hours did you have? To be honest with you, I can't work it completely out because I had a lot of breaks in my driving. So from January to about July, it was very consistent. It was pretty much one lesson a week for about an hour and a half. I think there were weeks where some of the lessons were only an hour, or I didn't have a lesson, because obviously there's things like Easter holidays that come up and then people go away, and, you know, I had exams and things like that. So someone can obviously do the maths. If we call it, 6 months worth, so 6 times 4, hour and a half. So yeah, from January to July, it was pretty much a lesson a week. And then I took a test in July and didn't pass that one. And then I had a nice long break because tests kept getting cancelled and rescheduled and all this and that. And then I just had sporadic lessons here and there. And then when I took my test in March and obviously passed, I had like a lesson the day before. So I'd say the main bulk of it was probably about maybe 40 hours of lessons, maybe 50. And then I did a lot of driving myself in between because I was fortunate enough to have a car that I was able to do that in. But I don't think anymore you can say, oh, you need a certain number of lessons or a certain amount of hours. It's honestly just about your practice, and it also depends on what kind of driver you are, you know, how confident you are. I was actually learning initially more where my college was because that was easier for me and my instructor, and then obviously the test center was actually a little bit closer to me, and things like that. So I had lessons in a lot of different places and a lot of different timings and things like that. So yeah, I don't think a specific number of lessons or hours are needed. Ellie Chatfield asked, did you get on with your instructor? Yes, I did. He was lovely, really patient and really good at explaining everything, and also talked a lot more about like the theory behind things, or explaining like why something is. And when I was preparing for my theory test, which I actually didn't tell anyone about, I just went and did it as a surprise because that was just so much easier. We had already been like preparing theory before then. She also asked, did you feel pressure to learn how to drive? I think there was a little bit of pressure there, but, you know, it was also something I wanted to do. Like, obviously you feel the pressure, like you're 17, it's something that's kind of like seen as a norm when you're 17 to learn to drive. I think that's just like the thing people associate, especially in this country. You know, in America it's like 16 and stuff, but at the same time I really wanted to learn how to drive. I wanted that independence and I wanted a nice little car. So for those of you wondering, I have a Fiat 500. Absolutely love it. Emily Katerina asked, how much did your lessons cost? So I can't work out the overall cost, but an hour and a half was £33.50. I think an hour was like £22.50 and 2 hours was £44.50 or something like that, which was quite reasonable because a lot of my friends were paying like £60 for 2 hours, and my 2-hour lessons, if I ever had them, were £44. So yeah, obviously look around before you commit to one instructor because some are way more expensive than others, and it's literally the same thing. Jen Cath _ asked, would you recommend learning the theory or taking the theory test before learning to drive? I would say before you start learning to drive, do learn a little bit of theory because you just need to understand, especially the road signs, what they mean. Because obviously if you're in the car anyway and there's a sign up ahead, you don't know what it means, you know, you kind of need to have an understanding. But I'd say probably take your theory test when you're a few months in. So my birthday was obviously in the January and I didn't take my theory test to the May, because there wasn't really any rush to take it, because you still need to take your theory test before you do the practical, obviously. And I was still learning at that point before taking the practical test. But, you know, I'd say probably take the theory test when you're a little bit into your driving, because you actually pick up a lot and learn a lot of theory when you're doing your practical lessons anyway. But obviously if you've done it beforehand, it's better, you know, because you already know all this stuff. But I feel like you learn a lot of your theory whilst you're learning to drive as well. Alice.2Peplo asked, best way to revise theory. So I had this app, which is like a 4-in-1 app. I think that's what it's called. So it had like all the theory, it had the highway code, it had the videos that you need to learn. And that was £5. I feel like it's like the one that says it's #1 bestseller. It's the top one that everyone basically takes and buys. And I would say it's definitely worth the £5. That's really all I used. I was also sent like a colouring book thing from a company, and I did use that from time to time, but I'd say the app was the main bulk of it. After the stream, I will go and find it and leave it in the description box below if you want to come back to it. But I'm pretty sure when I did a video on my theory tests and things like that, which again you can go back and watch my channel, was about a year ago that got uploaded, so it wouldn't take you very long to scroll back. I did talk about that app and how brilliant it was, because it's constantly testing you. You can take as many tests you want, and it's obviously got the videos, and the videos on that app are very, very similar. So I'd say if you can get an app like that, if you're happy to spend £5, it's honestly worth it, then do it, because you don't need anything else. Yeah, so at cherry.studies asked, what car do you have and what do insurance costs look like? So like I mentioned, I have a Fiat 500. I got that just before I started learning to drive, and then obviously for a period of time I didn't use it myself because I'd literally had like a couple of lessons and just waited a little bit. So I'd had a fair few lessons, I'd say, before I went out with a parent in the car, as obviously you've got to go out with someone who's held their license for like 3 years and is over the age of like 21 or 23, something like that. So yeah, I have a Fiat 500, and I think when I was learning to drive, you can get this insurance, and it's called Covered on Demand, and basically you can like book insurance day, so you don't have to be insured the whole time, so you're not wasting your money. I really recommend that insurance, because I know a lot of people use things like Adrian Flux, and I think it was like Marmalade and something like that, but that's really expensive compared to this, where you can like pay for like 90 days. So you have this insurance for 3 months and you've got 30 days to use it. So out of those 3 months, you've got like 30 days, and it's really flexible. So I'd really recommend something like that. And now that I've passed, I have a insurance policy with Tesco, and I've got a black box in the car. And I think that works out at like £700 for the year. And you pay it monthly. I think we paid like 2 months up front, because that gives you the option, obviously makes it cheaper monthly. And then they just came, literally installed the black box. And this was like right when lockdown was starting as well. So I was hoping they'd actually still come, and they did. But yeah, Tesco insurance was so cheap, and I'm also the name driver, which was surprising because usually that would make it more expensive, but it's actually very affordable. And if you're working at Tesco, you do get staff discount, but obviously I'm not, so but yeah, I would recommend Tesco. If you are past your test, I would really recommend looking into black box insurance, as a lot of the time it is cheaper. And with Tesco, the only thing, they don't even restrict you on like hours or anything. You get 100 up to 100 bonus miles each month if your driving's good, so that's always a perk. Emily.Wadsworth-X asked, how do you get over the fear of driving alone? This was actually something that took me a little while. So when I passed my test, I would take people out in the car, like my family, and then I think one day, because of where my house is, you have to get out on quite like a busy 50-mile-per-hour road. So I think that was the thing I was most nervous about. I was fine with driving around the town because I'd done that and, things like that. But yeah, getting out on the road, especially when you're going to turn right, because obviously you've got to look both ways. I feel like you just got to get out and do it. I didn't have the radio on or anything, just because I didn't want any distractions for like the first time. But yeah, I'd say if you are afraid of driving alone, you just got to get out and do it. When you pass, even if you want to wait like a month or two and just keep taking people in the car with you, and then eventually do it. And I'd say just do a route you're familiar with. So I literally drove like for 5 minutes to the shop, and then parked up. The parking was awful, but it was fine because that was like the first time, and I managed to fix it. And then just drive home. Or then I think the next time I just drove to McDonald's, a simple route that took me like 10-15 minutes. I knew where I was going. So I think that's the best way to get over the fear of driving alone. Lottie Cook asked, how do I stop being anxious when I drive? So I would say one thing you can take is Rescue Remedy. I remember taking that before my test, actually, because I would get quite panicky, which I discovered in one of my tests. And yeah, I'd like do the stupid thing, and there you go. So yeah, I would say Rescue Remedy does help. You can get like the drops, that's what I took, but also just to like calm yourself before, just don't think about it. Especially if you've got your instructor in the car, they've obviously got the pedals, they've got power over you. So if something's going to go wrong, they're there to fix it. They're like your other set of eyes. But obviously if you're alone, again, like I said, Rescue Remedy will just take yourself to familiar places and just go slow, and put some P plates on if you're really worried about it, because people will have a bit more respect for you. S_Little_Geek_Girl_ asked, what's the hardest part of learning? For me, I found the hardest part was just learning, how to change the gears initially, and when to change up and when to change down. I mean, you get the hang of it very quickly. And then I'd also say for a while I found things like what was it, parallel parking. That was the one thing I really just hated with a passion. And I think because of where I was learning, there's a lot of hills. So when you're on a hill, when then you're going down the hill. So yeah, I hated parallel parking. I think that was the worst thing out of everything, and I will try and avoid it as much as I can now. She also asked, is it worth learning if you're going to uni? I did think about this, but I honestly think it is worth it, because if you think about it, uni's like 3 years minimum. So by the time you come home, you're like 21, and I will guarantee you there will be a lot of people your age who already know how to drive. And I just feel like even when you come home in between university, just to be able to have that freedom. And like now, obviously, I've got the whole summer before uni, and if I didn't drive, I'd be so trapped and so restricted. So yeah, even if you are going to university, I would definitely say learn to drive. If you're really worried about like time frames, do an intensive course and things like that. And then if you do your whole intensive course and you take a test or whatever, you don't pass, then you can just top up here and there rather than just having no understanding of how to drive anyway. Emily Katrina asked, what are the examiners like? Are they harsh? Are they friendly? The examiners in my area, some were really nice, and because obviously I've spoken to a lot of people, and before your test, you'd always ask like your friend, oh, which examiner did you have? Some were really nice. Some weren't very nice at all. Some were like really harsh. But also I read online, it's a lot to do with their statistics, so they can only pass like a certain number of people in a week or something, which I think is ridiculous. So some days they'll be on a really good term and they will look at it thinking, oh my God, we don't have enough people passing. And sometimes they'll look at it going, we've got too many people passing, do we need to be harsher? But yeah, I honestly just think it's the area you live in, depends on how the examiners are really. What are your opinions on your car versus driving your instructors? So my car, like I mentioned, is a Fiat 500 and it's a 2013 model. And my instructor's car was actually a Fiat 500 and was a 2015 model. And the only real difference is, apart from like the interior, was that on his car he had a sensor for when you're reversing, whereas on my car you don't have any of that. So I'd say they're very similar to drive, and that was one of the reasons I liked my instructor and kind of went with that, because I went car shopping. I basically like looked at a couple of cars just before my 17th birthday, really. And then when I'd obviously got the car, we were like looking at instructors, and we actually saw him like driving around, and we thought actually that's a really good idea to try and learn in a car that's very similar to the one you've got, especially when you're going in between lessons, because I did have a lesson with another instructor before then, and the cars were so different, and obviously going from one to another can be not confusing, but you know, just adapting to the biting point of the clutch again, the position of the gears, of how the indicators work, all that kind of stuff. So I just found it very easy to be learning and having two very similar models. And the final question I've got written down here is driving after you pass your test more or less stressful? I actually think it's less stressful, just because when you're driving to pass your test, there's so many things you have to do in order to pass the test. You know, check your mirrors every 6 seconds, do all this stuff. And I think when you're driving yourself, you don't really think about a lot of that stuff as much. So it's kind of a little bit less stressful. Obviously, you don't have someone in the car with you all the time, and you don't have the reassurance and the power of someone having a spare brake, but you know, it's all right. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the questions that are in the live chat. So if there's anything I've not answered, then feel free to leave it in there and I will answer them now. But I think a lot of them I've answered. Can you do a drive with me? Yeah, I can, once I figured out how to attach a camera to the windscreen of my car. I think you can probably buy a car mount or something. But if I figure that out, I will let you know, and I'll probably try and do one of those, because I can't film a lot of other videos at the moment. Did you have 1 or 2 hour lessons? Majority of the time mine were an hour and a half, just because I found that was good length for me, and it also worked really well around my college timetable, as I would try and do a lesson in one of my frees, particularly on a Tuesday, or I would do it probably before college, which was more ideal, or after, whatever. But not all instructors obviously do that. So I'd say if you are going to do that, a 2 hour lesson out of the 1 or 2 hours is probably more beneficial. Was the theory test hard to revise and understand? I'd say it's pretty straightforward. I think the things that were most confusing were especially things about like trams and stuff, because we don't have those around here. And obviously I think in a lot more places they do have a tram system, and I was just trying to remember things like that, because you don't see that on a daily basis or anything like that. But I would say it's pretty simple. I think the hardest part are the videos, just because you can't tell exactly where you've clicked, if you've clicked it properly. Even when you go in to do the test, it even tells you, you won't see like a mouse on the screen or anything. You just got to hope for the best. But in terms of revision, it's pretty straightforward, and I mostly did a lot of it like the week or night before leading up to the test. I don't think I have any more questions. So if you've got any questions, this is your last chance to send them in. Otherwise, I will wrap it up here. So I'll just give you a few minutes if you do have anything. But I feel like I have covered a lot today, actually. How do you find the prices of maintaining a car? I feel like you can probably look that up online. You can obviously tell, if you're buying a more expensive car or something like a BMW or an Audi, obviously the parts of the car are going to be more expensive to replace. But if you literally look it up online, it will tell you what the cheapest kind of cars are. Also, if you are a new driver, you can look it up and it will tell you what the cheapest cars to insure a new driver on are. And I know Fiat 500 is literally either the cheapest or one of the cheapest anyway. But in terms of like maintaining the car, again, it's just kind of dependent on the brand. So I've had things replaced on my car or like MOT services, anything like that, and you can pretty much find the prices online for that. So I hope that helps. But yeah, literally Google is your best friend, and it will tell you kind of like how much it costs. I mean, my car costs like £30 for a full tank, which is pretty cheap. So yeah, again, like I said, just Google things. People have the same questions and be able to tell you. And yeah, obviously it depends where you buy. If you buy parts for your car, where you get them from, but general costs are very similar across the country. Just checking that I did answer everything on this list, but I think I did. Yeah, I think that is everything. Like I said, if you do have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below after the stream. I'm happy to come back and answer those for you. Oh, Emily just asked, what did you look for in your first car, or did you already know you were interested in Fiat 500s? I'd always had an interest in a Fiat 500, but they're a little bit more expensive than other cars. And I think also, it's quite a classic, iconic car, something like a Mini, again, it's kind of quite iconic. But when we were looking, we also looked at Peugeot 108 because they're quite small and compact. And I know, I think, I don't want to get this wrong, but I feel it's an Igo. I can't remember if that's like Toyota or Hyundai, one of those. They do an Igo. And again, I would just say look up online before getting a car what some of the cheapest cars are to insure new drivers on and learner drivers on, because you don't want to be getting a car with a really big engine. So I think mine's a 1 or a 1.2 litre engine, which is quite reasonable, but some cars got a 1.4 and that makes it really, really expensive. So yeah, when you're looking for your first car, I'd say look at something that's not huge, something that's kind of small, maintainable. And again, like I said, just look up how much it's going to cost people to be insured on it. And the other thing I was going to say, oh yeah, obviously just find something that's within your price range, and it doesn't have to be a brand new car. Like my car is technically 7 years old. It had a couple of previous owners, I think. The mileage was about 35,000 miles, which isn't bad actually, and it was in a really good condition. So you don't have to go out and buy a brand new car when you're just first getting a car, really. I actually think it's better to get something older, because you never know, you might have a bump or a scratch or anything like that. Holly asked, how long did it take you to pass your test? So like I mentioned, I did one in the July and then didn't pass that one. That was my first one, so I wasn't expecting to pass. I was quite nervous. And then I took quite a big break from driving, and then test got cancelled because of like weather and stuff. So then I ended up passing my test in March. So technically it had been like just over a year since I started learning. But if you think about, I did lessons mainly from January to July. And then I literally had like a couple of lessons around end of February, beginning of March time, just before I took my test again. So I'd say if I hadn't had that big like gap, because I was meant to sit a test in like the November time, and my test centre just got so busy and weather was awful, so everything kept getting cancelled. But if you ignore like the gap in terms of that, it's probably about 6-7 months learning. So I think if I'd had more lessons or longer lessons, I probably could have got through it quicker. But like I said, anyway, you've got such a long waiting game for tests, and I feel like now that's going to be even worse because there's been no tests for 3 to 4 months. So good luck, everyone. Okay, I can't see any more questions coming in, so I hope I've answered everything. But yeah, feel free to leave that in the comment section below if after this video you think of something else. Next week's video is all about university, so I'm going to be talking obviously about my experience with university, because I'll be going this autumn. But I'm also going to be talking through the whole application process, open days, what to look out for. I have done like a Q&A video on this, but obviously on a live stream I can go more in depth and I can answer your questions straight away. I've already got some saved from Instagram, so if you do think of any, feel free again to leave them in the comment section below. But yeah, all about university next week. So it's going to be great for anyone who's in year 12, even if you're in like year 11 right now, you're thinking about your A-levels, and I'm going to talk a little bit about different opinions on A-levels and things like that. I'm also going to briefly touch on Oxbridge, as obviously I did apply to Cambridge, so I will briefly touch on that kind of whole experience and how that's different. So yeah, that's going to be next week. This time next week at 5 p.m. I will be doing a stream all about university. So hopefully I'll see you then. But if you did enjoy this, leave it a thumbs up when you leave. Again, I'll answer comments, and if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to do so. I'm going to try and get video up for Saturday, fingers crossed. So hopefully that will be up. If it's not, it will be up sometime in the week. And yeah, I'll see you all then. Bye.